Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's feeling energized or ready to be energized from this session after lunch. Let's do quick intros, and because I've already introduced myself this morning, we'll skip me. Nicola, why don't you give a quick intro and talk a little bit about, maybe even talk a little bit about how we connected and how this came together.
Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Nicola and I work for Amadeus. I'm in charge of the product management of all the portfolio related to the customer experience, including loyalty. My background before Amadeus, I've been previous 20 years in several airlines. To mention one, few, Lufthansa, British Midland, SAS, and Alitalia. And we met Phil through LinkedIn. We start chatting a bit, sharing a bit this commonality. Then we had a call. We have a same view on how customer experience is totally disconnected in this industry, and this is why I am here.
That's great. Brad, please.
I think some of you were there last year, but Brad Anderson, I'm the Vice President for the Hilton Honors Program. Been with Hilton about 7 years now, all within the loyalty program elements and design. So everything you love about Hilton Honors is my team. Everything you have feedback, we will take that as well. But yeah, as Dave mentioned, I had such a great time last year. Saw this panel on connected experience. It's something I'm very passionate about and for the program. So you'll hear me talk about that. But excited to be back, round two.
That's great. Thanks, Brad. Scott?
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Hinshaw. I spent many years at American Airlines, and the last 6 of my 20 years at American, I was on the leadership team of AAdvantage, where I was very much trying to create a connected experience, and mostly I can talk about why we failed in many ways today. So I'm passionate about it from that perspective. Left American, did some other things in loyalty, including about a year and a half at IBS Software, doing some loyalty consulting for their loyalty platform. And currently I'm in charge of customer experience insights and loyalty at Signature Aviation. If you haven't heard of us, it's probably because you're not a billionaire, because Signature is the world's largest network of private aviation terminals. So we service pilots, private aviation operators, and ultimately the people who are in the back of the plane.
Fantastic. So what we have here to talk about this topic, we've got like the perfect representation of airline perspective, hotel perspective, and connectivity technology, years of historical and future booking, selling, retailing experience. So let me just give a minute on where this topic came from. You guys heard me talk this morning, and I mentioned it yesterday too, so apologies for repeating myself for a third time, but like that's the Jack Welch way that you get a point across. Loyalty is stuck, right? It's 2023. The first modern loyalty program started in 1979. AAdvantage started in 1981, right? Do the math, 43 or 4 years, depending on where you count from and what month we're in. But it's insane that we're still doing so many of the things that we've done for 40 years, okay? Let's set that aside. Let's accept the fact that people are willing to pay for a better experience, and that's why God invented elite status, or Bob Crandall, or whoever conceived elite status. And that ultimately loyalty is about delivering the best experience for that customer based on their value and and what the airline value is to them, and vice versa. And that premium has to be earned, right? That getting that premium amount of revenue and margin for the better experience has to be earned. And then the last thing I'll add is that in my past life at our dialogue, we did a bunch of primary research, and Bond, after acquiring us, has continued that into drivers of loyalty that go beyond transactional. And this was research that we started in like the mid-20-teens, and first started talking about this in 2014 and 2015, which coincidentally we got engaged to work with a Japanese manufacturer of screens for IFE, for in-flight entertainment, and for vehicles. And that, in parallel with the research we're doing, led us to this notion of seeing the future, which was always going to be about a better customer experience, trumping everything, including price and accessibility, as the driver of customer decision making. And it led us to this notion of, and it was like, I'm not saying we invented this idea, because God knows we didn't, but for what we were doing, we were really fixated on creating this connected customer experience, because what we identified were 4 drivers separate from the transactional or the financial driver of loyalty, right? Rewards, free stuff, generally. But we identified 4 other drivers, one of which is the value of time, one of which is the value of recognition. So know to serve, we've talked about that a lot. The value of information or education, and the value of access. So when you think about time and education, they go hand in hand in terms of how do you optimize your time relative to your travel experience, or relative to your Saturday running errands date night experience, whatever that experience is. That's where this whole idea came from. So this isn't a new idea in 2023, but like Scott said, this, and we've all talked about this, and that's why we're all sitting here, because this is not a new topic for us to be thinking about or trying to action. But again, like, it's 2023, how come we haven't gotten there yet? Last thing I want to say is, living mostly in Atlanta, and obviously flying Delta, no offense to Southwest, but that's another story. Delta came out at CES and said they're going to offer free Wi-Fi system-wide, and they're going to be the first carrier to do that. So did they just decide we're going to offer free Wi-Fi because it's a good idea? No, you get free Wi-Fi if you're a SkyMiles member, which meant it was going to be an acquisition opportunity, which meant they were going to be able to collect more data and have better insights on you. It's tied to the in-flight experience as a point of acquisition because it's zero cost other than the free Wi-Fi. But they've branded this thing called Delta Sync. What is Delta Sync? We don't have anybody here from Delta, but this will be a continuing conversation. My theory is that Delta Sync is going to start on board and going to cascade in terms of employing the Nike strategy that they call know to serve. But it's the beginning of the connected experience because the partnership that they have with Lyft, where you register both, where you sync up your accounts, has already started to a Lyft notification 4 hours pre-departure that says, hey, you're flying in 4 hours. Do you want to reserve a car now? So if you start there and you extend that backwards and forwards in the whole travel ribbon, the whole travel experience for that trip, it means in the perfect world, your iPhone wakes you up, or your Android phone knows when to wake you up, knows how long it takes you to get ready in the morning, your car shows up to take you to the airport, and you know how to navigate the airport based on security times, based on your time pre-departure, where the Starbucks is, because that's another partnership, at least for Delta, where they're syncing these accounts, and that's the beginning of this actually becoming reality. Okay, that's more than a minute, but that's sort of the idea behind this conversation. So if we start there, why don't we just start with where do we think the broadest opportunity is? Because that's only the beginning, right? I mean, there's a lot of rails to ride, existing partnerships, payments, booking technology, servicing technology. Let's just start there, and we'll just let the conversation take place.
Yeah. Happy to start.
You want to start,
That's
Brad?
helpful. Yeah, I mean, you brought up Delta and Lyft, and in some ways, where we're trying to go and what the opportunities are, it's good to know what we have right now today, right? So for Hilton Honors, for us, we have points and those elements, and we have a breadth of partners that make it even more rewarding to engage with Honors. But Lyft, we did a few different things with that partnership. you can link like Delta and earn rewards for your Lyft stays or your Lyft rides. When you're in stay, that was really important to us. And how does Honors make that experience better and seamless? So in your example, and for the Hilton Honors app, there's already an integration with Lyft in the app. And when you click that integration in your stay card, it actually brings up the destination of the hotel. Like, how many of you had to go, what's the address? I need to type in a Lyft over here, come back to
Or go to
Hilton
the wrong
Honors.
hotel.
Right, so it's already there. You click once, you're on your way with Lyft. So that's a real capability right now, right? So that's a way to think beyond points and the stay experience. But there's other things going on right now. I'll leave, and we can go to the future in a second, but in our connected room technology. So when you're in our hotel rooms, there's about 800 rooms like this. You have your name, your screen, your tier. We've started to integrate with our partners like Showtime and Netflix, because customers view their trip as more than just the hotel stay. They're watching Netflix on the plane, coming to the hotel. They want to start where they ended, right? So that's already kind of preloaded for you in the experience. So just wanted to say, these are real examples now.
And this is
where
the
can
app,
we go
and,
further?
and also, like for people who don't have the app, the tablet in room.
On the screen room.
Or the TV.
The actual screen.
Yeah.
So I start where we are, but I'll give the future to the other team.
I can talk about things that we had hoped would happen and didn't happen in my time at American, and I don't think have happened yet. But to me, the ultimate place that you want to get to is solving the real big pain points in travel, and that's when things go wrong. So usually those things go wrong on the airline side. They're the ones that disrupt kind of the timing of your travel. And so the ultimate connectivity that we were striving for and contemplating was, how could you not just have technology to talk with a hotel partner or a rental car partner or Uber or whoever it is, but actually have a deeper relationship so that both partners have an agreement to actually do something about it. More like a concierge type service, which if you think about it, you can't really do that for a lot of people. You need to reserve that for your dual elites. But a great example is I was in Orlando at our headquarters, and I was flying back to Dallas, and I'm watching my flight on American delay, and I can see that the incoming plane has now been diverted to Tampa, and because I'm a longtime veteran, I'm doing the math. Like, it's already 9 p.m., this flight was supposed to take off at 7. Even if it does take off, I'm better off at this point getting a hotel and staying the night and going at it again tomorrow. And there were some amazing things that, as now a customer instead of an employee traveler, that American's done that helped me understand what was happening on the app and solve some flight problems. But what would have been awesome is if an American has this partnership with Hyatt, right? If there had been cooperation with Hyatt to say, hey, I see now that you've booked this flight for tomorrow. We've already grabbed a room for you at the Hyatt, which is in the airport. Hit this button to accept or decline it. But you guys know what happens. Like, there's a rush to go book rooms whenever there's a weather event. And this was a weather event, so it wasn't just my flight. And just that one little cooperation between the two preferred partners would have made a huge difference. And the same type of thing could happen on the other end. Like, let's say I haven't left my hotel room, my flight's been delayed. If American was partnering with Hilton, maybe just automatically, hey, would you like me to change your checkout time? And maybe even beyond what is part of the program. Maybe in this case, if you're ultra elite in both programs, it's a 5 o'clock checkout. But those types of problem solving would be the ultimate thing I think we could do to connect different modes of transportation together.
I mean, especially from an airline standpoint, right? Because the value and the abstraction or lack of abstraction of time,
Yeah.
and the certainty that you need, and crews becoming illegal, and all those things.
I have a bit more pessimistic view, or at least of the starting point. So I think that we have to slide the problem to. Before talking about the connected trips, that I am a big fan, each brand needs to fix its own stuff. When you have, I'm sure that many of you happen, that you are doing the check-in, and sometime before or just after, you may receive an email saying, why don't you fly to these destinations? So someone from the airlines is sending a marketing activities that just because does not know that the customer is at that moment in that touch point. And this has nothing to do with technology. Just want to defend a bit the area that I'm working at. It has nothing to do with technology.
It's people.
It's people, and I
Priority.
think it's mindset, it's commitment, because it's not enough to say, yeah, we love the customers. It's also commitment and execution. So I think when you have this sort of a bad experience, it's about that. Second thing, and this is the second part of the problem, how do you connect the ecosystem? And this is where, before I was discussing with them, that I totally disagree that loyalty is in the commercial area. Loyalty should be in the marketing area, if there is a marketing area, or even better in a customer experience area. Some brands start to establish this role. Some brand that has this role is just an empty role. Many airlines has this chief customer experience officer, but when you ask them, what do you do?
They run the call center.
Sometimes it's the
Maybe.
call center, sometimes educate the crew on board. It's a bit blurry, but I think it's anyway good that they start introducing this concept. But when I see, and again, it's nothing to do with technology, okay? If today I arrived with United Airlines, okay, and United Airlines is partnered with Hilton, when you share points and when you share money, because when you share money, you are very good. Before we were discussing, hey, it's important that the Excel match in real time. Why don't you make the extra effort also to exchange the information that this customer is arriving into your hotel? And don't come with the privacy alibi. Privacy has nothing to do with this. You can transform your email into a token, and you just have to give the information there. And when I bring also an hotel experience, now, my personal experience, I travel a lot. Anytime I visit an hotel, I'm not a frequent flyer, I'm not a member of any of the hotels. I don't see the value for, okay? But still, I go there, and every time when I go to my office in Istanbul, to the Sheraton, why they keep asking me always the passport? And even more, why don't they send me an email before? Register your documentation here if I have to do. This has nothing to do with technology again. This is really to do with the fact that there is a dichotomy on the way customer and brand says we are customer-centric, and in the way you execute the customer centricity.
It's an interesting point, and I'll just pick off this example here. We had that exact problem, right? Like, how do you not have to have the passport presented at the front desk? We've actually just evolved the app where you can type that information in to get your digital key. So it's not that we don't want to have a hospitality moment. For some folks they do, sometimes they don't, but you're right, it's a pain point, so why can't I enter that before? And so we've solved that a bit, but I'd say to your other point, it's people, process, and technology, right? As a hospitality company, we want to have a relationship with you. In some ways, that doesn't always mean the front desk.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's texting the app, using our messaging experiences as well. So I think that expectation is, how can I do that across companies? That's a different challenge, but that's an excellent point.
Yeah, because what I want to complement is just technology has nothing to do with that. All these use cases can be easily implemented. What is really difficult, and this is technology can help, the communication part, because it's not enough that I exchange the data between United and Hilton. This is technically possible. But once Hilton receives this information, is Hilton equipped with the content team to send something? And this is where technology like ChatGPT can really help, because today we have proven that those things are not in the human scope. It's too complex. It's to make it at scale, you cannot have a human to do it.
Exactly. It is not scalable
No.
by humans. I mean, without like the most exceptional, like best in the world culture, and they're still breaking points.
Yeah, and you know, when again, I think if I ask what is the most customer-centric brand here, probably most of you will say Amazon. Okay, probably. At least in Europe, this is what we say, which is true. But what Amazon is doing special? If you think what Amazon is doing special is delivered by the promise. Simple thing. And how they do it. And we all know that if you call Amazon call center, they answer. They know what you are looking for. They know the answer. So Amazon is convincingly investing in customer experience. Period. Then, of course, they have the hard part, they deliver by the promise. So if they tell you this pen will arrive in 1 hour, they will keep the promise. In the airlines, not always we keep the promise. The hotel, I don't know, I never had bad experience in the hotel. But where you really think the difference between this industry and people like Amazon is that there are brands that they are really convinced to, and they really behaves with this customer centricity mindset, and it pays. Period. All the rest, yeah, you can say privacy, technology, there's nothing to do with that so far.
So can I build on that point? In the couple of years after I left American, I did a fair bit of consulting, and all too often there'd be someone talking to me about, how do I get into American and have them do this or that? And it was always, a technology solution, usually around being more personalized and more targeted and those sorts of things. And it felt like over and over I was having this conversation and people just were blown away because I would say, the problem, and I can only speak for American and it's a bit dated, so Grant I think is here, so maybe it's all changed now. But American is a product-centric company. It is not a customer-centric company. And it's just in the way it's organizationally designed. There's not a common kind of view towards the customer. So you have many different departments that have a product for which they're responsible for a revenue budget. And if you start trying to think about things from a customer perspective, what you wind up is someone has to win and lose. And who's going, we're going to talk to the customer about the most relevant thing at this point in time, but then someone says, well, I have a revenue budget to hit for Admirals Club membership enrollment, and we always talk about joining the Admirals Club at that channel. Now that you're saying I have to compete for relevancy, and so anything that you try to do, at least at American, and maybe United and Delta are better at it, but was up against this problem of an organizational design where you really weren't empowered to think about things from a customer perspective. And so when you start talking about things that are hard, like, hey, how can we partner with Hilton or Hyatt or someone else to do something that no one here has on their project list, no one has in their IT prioritization list, it's going to require us to do something completely off the charts. Yeah. It's hard to get someone to say, okay, I think I'm going to change what my group was telling everyone was our big initiative that we were going to go after, and I'm going to drop that and go do this thing that's kind of hard with a hotel. I think that's one of the main reasons why I think when I was trying to do it, technology was a problem. I agree with you that technology, I don't think is the problem anymore.
I think technology is the excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets the blame unfairly because, I mean, I said people in terms of why loyalty is stuck, but it's person, not people. It's the CEO and maybe the board as well saying, look, we're going to be, and this is why Amazon's so great, right? Day one, if anybody here has not read the Amazon letter to shareholders from their first year, 1997, as a public company, quick show of hands. Has everybody read that? So just Google day one letter to shareholders and read it. It's like a really short read. Amazon had just hit $150 million in revenue. And they put this letter to shareholders in every annual report. The original one is also in every annual report. And it talks about being obsessed with customers And that the reason they can do all these amazing things is because when Bezos started the company, he was obsessed. And I mean, this guy was like running quant hedge funds. He wasn't a marketer. But that is where people lead to prioritization, planning, allocating resources, and having that framework to guide it. And I will say, you know, and I don't do business with Delta except as a customer. You know, Delta used to really follow everybody in the industry, like going back 30 years. They were the last to get a co-brand card. They were the last to have a lot of things, but they've turned it around. And I would say that Ed Bastian and Tim Mapes, their CMO, like they are truly, they have transformed from being product centric to customer centric, and I think that's what it takes for an airline, for a hotel, and for like-minded partners who share that prioritization, because the connectivity is there.
Well, now it doesn't seem so earth-breaking, but when they did Delta Starwood,
Great
they were
example.
way ahead of the time. And actually, I think some of the technology that they used to enable Delta Starwood is probably what they're building off of and using for Lyft and these other partnerships. But I can tell you internally at American, it was kind of our internal joke of what would Delta do? And so that's why I was so happy to see American lead with loyalty points, whether you like it or not. I was just thrilled to see that American led with something. I was in elementary school when AAdvantage was created, but you know, we always like to talk about how innovative we were, but I was like looking around going, I don't remember the last time we innovated. By the way, United followed 1 week later.
Just like in 1981.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. In 1980, you were talking about Delta Starwood, but I was talking about 1981. United followed AAdvantage
A week to the day.
1 week later.
Yeah. Funny how that happened.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Scott, you brought up, I mean, if we're in search of a why, and kind of there's some hopeful pieces, a why and like how do we get there in the future, I think you're right on. It's a strategy, a bunch of choices, right, for us as our experiences. I agree with Nicola. I think for Hilton, we're very customer obsessed on, okay, what's the next innovation on the customer experience side, not the revenue side? So I'll give you a real example, and I'll give you guys some hope on why this product can go further. One of the challenges we tried to solve in the customer experience and connecting it together was you all have the same experience. You go to the front desk at a hotel, you hope you get upgraded for our elite tiers, right? So we decided to be the first in the industry to automate that, somewhat similar to the airlines, but much more complicated question, right? Length of stays are different, who do we upgrade, how do we figure all this stuff out? It's not a plane leaving that day. It's a multi-variable.
And potentially take that decision away from the person.
The rooms manager, right?
There's an internal balance on that. But that strategy question, we wanted to really get right for our customers. So now that we've innovated there, and I can't release all the information what we've done, that may set us up for a airline partner, a double upgrade. Like how do we, if you can get your house in order like Nicola was saying, then you open more opportunities for the connected experience. But that is the why and the challenge as an industry we have.
I can tell you, I'm a little pessimistic that at least American is going to go down this path after someone mentioned it, maybe it was our host here, that came out like a week ago where American was saying they're less interested in business travelers and they slashed their corporate sales team by 500 people. I'm just going to plug my industry for a second. We love it because as the airlines seem to be doing a worse and worse job with top tier flyers, to the extent they can, they're flocking to NetJets and private aviation solutions. And in our business, nothing is more important than momentum or connectivity. And we're nowhere near as big as airlines or hotels, but when I think about loyalty in private aviation, it's less and less about points and more about how do we create loyalty through a connected experience. And so we're doing things that I think are fun and innovative that will come out soon around how that we're integrating our rental car partnerships. So most of us have never done this before, but when you're flying private and you rent a car, the expectation is that the car is brought to you plainside and that it is the car you reserved is probably a high-end car. But then on the return, it is that when you return the car, you just throw the keys at one of our people and the rental is stopped. And And we struggle with that connection because we're not a rental car company. And so we're doing some technology things so that we can actually represent the rental car company as if we're them to connect that. And we think that's going to be a real game changer for people who just care. It's time. That's what they care about.
And it, this whole so I think about like what's the this isn't private flying, though I think you're dead on in terms of like that's where the JSX is, like that's sort of in between owning your own
the car
Gulfstream and flying commercial, because they have like their rental car partners, but if you think about kind of old school, like using a virtuoso travel agent to arrange this virtuoso level trip, they do all this, they do it manually, and they orchestrate that experience. So you just show up and somebody's there and they're saying, hey, go this way. We talked a little bit about this in terms of AI and how much do you rely on the machine versus, and Brad's point is right on. And I think, Scott, like same thing with private aviation. There's a human element that is there, even if they're literally just there to smile and say, have a great trip, or welcome to Washington, D.C., that this isn't purely a 0 and 1 type of solve.
Yes. You cannot build emotional connection with a machine. That's for sure. And the travel industry, the travel in general is about people, is about emotions. I mean, try to, next time you fly or next time you go to an airport, try to stop for a few seconds and make a snapshot of the people that you see. It's a magic snapshot, because behind that snapshot you see people. Any of those people is going somewhere for a purpose. Maybe someone is visiting the parents, another one back to the kids, another one for business. This is the magic of this industry. And on this one, I'm very optimistic. AI technology will help to fix all the gaps that we see today, but still remain it's a human business, the travel. And this will remain. I mean, I'm convinced of that.
So I have a guess at who I think might create a really cool solution. And I mentioned it to you last night. I'm not sure you agreed with me, so feel free to disagree. But if you'll notice, when Delta Starwood did their thing and United Marriott did their thing, they both shared the same issuer on their credit card. And I just refuse to believe that was a coincidence. I think when you start offering elite benefits outside of earning them, if you don't involve your issuer, it becomes a real sticking point. I think what you could see is one of the issuers, especially where they have a common hotel airline partner, solve some of these problems, right? And so the thing that we were hoping to create 6, 7 years ago that we just couldn't seem to get off the ground was a world where, when your plane lands, the thing that drives me nuts more than anything is, when do I request my Uber? Like, when is that exact right time? Right? There's no reason why we can't solve that today. Like, all the information is there. Algorithms can be created that say, okay, the exact right time if you land and your plane.
It's also public information.
Right. It pulls up to this gate, requests the Uber at this exact right time. You probably need an agreement with Uber because they don't love people guessing too early. And then you go straight to your Uber. The Uber already knows where to go because there's a partnership with the hotel. If you check bags, the bags maybe are already being shipped there. There's all this connected experience. And also, we were trying to create something with Amazon where as soon as someone showed they wanted to travel somewhere, some of their things that they typically buy from Amazon, like daily usage things, especially if you had a baby, maybe diapers, formula, the offer would be made to go ahead and ship them. But I can tell you not only did we have all sorts of technology problems and partnership problems, but you bring that up at an airline, and the first people that fight you are the people in charge of baggage revenue, check bags. Or we're going to lose check bag revenue. And a customer-centric company says, I've got to bet on the customer, and we'll figure out how to make money. But we were protecting a revenue stream and a product.
So when we first pitched this idea to somebody out other than the screen manufacturer, it was to an issuer, thinking that the payment rails were, I mean, especially with compartmentalization.
And they know a lot of things too around when transactions happen.
You've got all the charge records, or you've got all the records. I mean, the data's sitting in multiple places.
Yeah.
It's on your phone. So part of the way we set this up was, look, the connected experience requires some sort of platform or the right coalition of people who will jointly fund a platform. Payment's a natural platform. At the time, Facebook wanted to be a platform for, Facebook, Google, Apple could be a platform, especially with Wallet. Yet what we're seeing is it's between Hilton and Lyft, Delta and Lyft, not Uber, though Uber's got their travel app that could be the super app that's going to have all this data together. One of the cool use cases, experiences of the SkyMiles Lyft partnership, or the Delta Lyft partnership, I should say, is when your flight arrives, there's a period of time, it's like 3 beats. It's maybe like 4 or 5 minutes after the plane is at the gate and the doors are open and deplanement has started. You get a notification that says, "Welcome to Reagan National Airport. Do you want to lift?" So it's that one little step, and to me, this is sort of a proof point. This is why I think this is the beginning of that, and it'll converge because Hilton and Lyft and Delta would be the natural, right? And that way, and this is where, like, the age-old, what comes first, hotel or air, right? Am I booking my flight first, or am I booking the hotel first? And that depends, right? But there's both the use case with that experience and that transaction, but there's also, like, there are metrics that Delta and Lyft and Hilton and Lyft are, and I won't put you on the spot to say this, but it's easy to see, right? How many more conjunctive Lyft trips do I have where the origin or destination is an airport and a hotel, where there's a mileage accrual transaction? So this is actually driving Delta, mileage sale revenue. It's driving transactions to Lyft. That's measurable versus people who have not synced their card. And you begin to make the business case when not using the Hilton Delta example, but how do you convince Scott Kirby and American that this is a product thing with benefits? It's going to take these small things, it's like 1,000 little.
I agree with Nicola. It's a mindset shift to reorient to the customer. So Hilton may be there, but as I think Scott mentioned a little bit, you got to be on the same page. And what's a loyalty program? It's a relationship. It's not selling you points, or we lose sight of that, and especially folks in this room. Like, how do we reground to? They don't really care what the issues are between companies. They want to have a seamless experience across. They have relationships with both, and I think the key question is what promises we want to make, and can we fulfill upon them seamlessly at scale and not lose the human element. That's a high bar for us as an industry, and we should seek to meet it.
Just to add to that, to your comment, Phil, because we'll have to wrap up there, but, and Brad, that was a perfect note to end on, but to your question about the incremental rideshare trips, I mean, we only have to think back a few years to the SPG Uber partnership, and it was structured in a way that actually you earn points at a higher rate if your origin or destination was an SPG hotel. I mean, that was really exactly what you've just talked about right there, and it's actually already been done. So, no one's replicating that earning model today, but that's just to be honest, it's a policy choice. Any of those partners could if they wanted to, and SPG, of course, typically a leader in novel approaches to things. They did that. You earned more points if your Uber ride started at or ended at an SPG property, and you have to assume that the decision-making process in that, and certainly if you were to look to replicate that today, the decision-making process today would certainly involve those data considerations and how you can gain actionable insights from that data, as part of that exercise. I want to kind of keep us moving, so how about a big round for these guys, huh?